All right. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, I should say. It's officially 12 o'clock. Thank you for joining the UC Botanical Gardens Virtual Conference Center. I'm Christine Manu. I'm Education Director here at the UC Botanical Garden, and it is our pleasure to bring you a Zoom program today. The garden, as most of you probably know, is a unique place. It's a living museum of plants, 34 acres of plants from all over the world with a mission of conservation, education, and research, and connecting people to the natural environment. And today we are bringing you two of our stellar horticulture staff who attend a couple collections here in the garden. And I'm going to let them go ahead and introduce you to themselves and to the program today because they have an amazing hour-long travelogue to share with you. So with that, I will turn it over to you two. Thank you so much.
Hi, welcome everyone out in
Hi.
internet land.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Sumatra travelogue.
I'm going to share our screen, but I'm Eric Hupperts, one of the horticulture staff here.
And I'm Corina Rieder. I'm another horticulturist. I take care of the tropical plants here. And Eric has the Asian collection. So we want to talk to you about our trip to Indonesia this last January, where we went to Sumatra. Um, it was a trip that, let's just say, it was amazing and also really tiring. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was absolutely incredible. We're going to jump right into it, but this was just a really unique opportunity for both of us to see plants in the wild in a really unique place, the biodiversity hotspot.
Yeah, definitely. Um, there we are in the wild. Um,
Um, so um, as Karina mentioned, sorry, I'm just trying to minimize this. Okay, there we go. As Karina mentioned, you have the
mhm,
tropical house at the
mhm.
glasshouse collections.
And part of that collection is a very small part of it is Nepenthes that I take care of, which is among a lot of different things. And I've always wanted to see them growing in situ in the wild. And one day Eric came along and told me he signed up for this amazing trip that I've always wanted to go on, but was always too afraid to go by myself or ask anyone to come along with me. Um, and he was very excited. And he told me, and it's with Red for Natural Adventures, which do sort of backcountry, um, plant and animal explorations. So, anyways, the next day I sweet talked him, sweet talked him into let me go along with him.
It was like one of the best days at work because I couldn't imagine a better travel buddy who both is fun to be around, but also knows plants really well.
Oh, a few plants.
So we went to Sumatra, which is the largest island that's within Indonesia. It's not the largest island in the world, but it's a very large island.
Yeah.
And if you look at the image here, the map, you can see it has a mountain range that runs the entire length of the island. And that range is called the Bukit Barisan Range. And there's three national parks, one in the far north, one in the center, one in the far south, that make up a UNESCO World Heritage Site called uh, Sumatra's Rainforest Heritage. And we saw some pretty incredible forests in
Oh
that
yeah.
place.
Oh yeah. And a wide range of forests. But the real reason for this trip, it was a Nepenthes adventure trip to see Nepenthes in the wild. And Sumatra has quite a lot of Nepenthes. And here's a few different ones. Just you can see from these five pictures the diversity of the pictures. And I can explain a little bit about Nepenthes. How do we keep going ahead here?
Um,
Is
there we
that,
go.
oh, so well, here's our range map of Nepenthes, the genus, which is the one genus in its own family, Nepenthes. The real hot spot for Nepenthes is the Philippines, where there's just so many new species being described to science in the last 10 years. Even this year, there's been two described for Philippines. But Sumatra has 42 at least. And we saw, let's say, about two-thirds of that, so roughly about 30-ish. And we didn't even cover the whole island. So I mean, it's amazing. You're gonna have to forward these. I don't know how
Okay.
to do it. So Nepenthes itself is, in case you're not sure about what Nepenthes is, I'm assuming you know a little bit because that's why you're here. For one, um, it's a carnivorous plant in the tropics. They're called the tropical pitcher plant, and they're not related to, but very similar to American pitcher plants, the Darlingtonia, the Helianthera, and the Sarracenias, where they have pitfall traps for mostly insects and other things to fall into that gets digested. So here, if you look at these pictures, you can see um, how the leaves, at the end of the leaves, they have these strange structures, which are the pitchers, and there's different parts to that. But what these plants have done is they've adapted their leaves to have new uses. So the petiole, the leaf stem has changed into a flattened photosynthetic fake leaf, when the actual leaf has changed into a tendril and a three-dimensional jug of sorts. And there's different parts to it, and you know, the just the difference of each plant. I mean, there's so many different ways these pictures form. So you know, that's just sort of the basics.
One thing that we were just talking about was look at the roots on that
Oh yeah.
image. Like these plants, their roots are kind of
They're
barely
they're
existent.
very minimal, and so there's a lot of thought that yes, maybe they are sort of truly possibly epiphytes. They don't really need their roots. The pitchers hold the moisture, and they get moisture from that and from, you know, rain. Um, they also have two kinds of pitchers. They have upper pitchers, which are a little more plain, and lower pitchers, which are often speckled or more interesting to look at.
And so this is just a huge picture on a species that you can see all the basics that were in that image before, like the peristem up here at the lip, and the wings down here by my thumb, but just basic pitcher plant.
And there's a lid on top which has different functions. And at the peristome, often there is, you know, a sweet treat for your insects to be, uh, you know, to come for a snack, and then they fall in, or sometimes it's on the lid. You know, it all changes between different plants. So
And we threw this image in because often we focus on just like one little plant in a pot or maybe one pitcher, but this is how we saw a lot of them growing,
yeah,
just kind of intertwined amongst the foliage
yeah.
of other plants.
This is just habitat, straight on habitat right there. Um, which is, you know, one of the reasons we wanted to go, because, you know, I grow these plants and they are always in just a pot, and it's just a plant. And you see it in the orchid house, the orchid fern and carnivorous plant house, sorry. You see them in just a pot growing singly. And so we wanted to see how they grow with friends. So
With friends is a good way of
yeah, with
putting it.
friends, definitely. So there were quite a few reasons we wanted to go. We wanted to see the different altitudes, lowland versus highland, you know, what different species are they growing with? You know, I had heard Nepenthes often grow with Phalaenopsis, not Phalaenopsis, I'm sorry, Paphiopedilum orchids. I didn't see a single one the
Yeah,
entire
didn't see
time.
any.
You know, so that kind of maybe, you know, was a little disappointing, but you know, what plant communities, all of it that you just don't get in books or internet or in a greenhouse.
Yeah, there's really no substitute for seeing these plants in the wild. As people who grow plants, seeing how they succeed in the wild is the best education for us
Yeah.
and for growing these plants. One of the reasons I personally wanted to join this adventure was actually less on the Nepenthe side, but more to get me into these habitats because the highland Nepenthes grow in very specific cloud forest, high montane, almost elfin pygmy forest covered in moss, like in this image, and that is
Yeah.
one of my favorite habitat types. So this
Yeah.
was a way to get to that
I
space.
agree too. That was one of my other reasons for wanting to go. That was great. So part of the habitat, though, was man-made habitat. Very. We did not expect to see this. Where actually here is, your caterpillar truck came and scraped the side of the mountain to make a roadway, and so you can see those scrapings left by, and some seeds just happened to deposit on the side of this, and I think it might be limestone or something. It's very wet. They germinated, and now there's nepenthes growing, among other things. So that was really neat to see. Um, we saw a lot of oddball things like this.
Yeah, especially these road cuts.
Yeah,
It's
those
just
road
very
cuts.
interesting. And Nepenthes, the seeds are dispersed by wind,
Yeah,
so they could land anywhere. It's
anywhere.
just a
Yeah,
game of chance.
yeah.
But seeing how these pictures really use the other objects around them, branches, other live plants, and really use their tendril
Mhm,
abilities to
mhm.
anchor themselves.
And to climb up. They're vining plants, so that helps them vine up, and they're not hurting any other plant. They just sort of the tendril, the leaf tip grows around something and it can pull itself up and keep getting taller. And then it's also a good way for the pitchers to then be in the right position to, be up and not down. Um, this digital flora of Indonesia really helped us with identifying a lot of the plants we saw along the trip. So we just wanted to point that out. It's a great internet resource. And
Mhm.
yeah, otherwise I think I would have been completely in the dark with so many things, not
Yeah,
just Nepenthes.
yeah. Good for ferns too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
let's
let's
start our
go.
adventure. Let's go. Our first spot we went to was actually not a Nepenthe spot.
Mm-mm.
It was lowland rainforest that was a site on the edge of a large, very well-known national park. And it was a site where orangutan reintroductions had happened with orangutans that were rehabilitated and released
Yeah.
back into the wild. So it was in Gunung Lesur National Park, which is in the far north of Indonesia. Very, very biodiverse spot. And
Yeah.
because of the large amount of space, even with all the pressure from human societies, there's still tigers. There's a few rhino left, but it's an excellent population of orangutans and other
Yeah, and
primates.
and not to miss, if you make it to Sumatra, don't miss this place. There's hostels nearby. Yeah, so there's a couple of our friends that we met. There's a mama and her baby, and they're just hanging out, literally hanging on the lianas.
And I like this picture because usually, almost the same with Nepenthes, you see just these zoomed in pictures of orangutans. But here you see them in context of their habitat, their space, and
Uh-huh.
it makes sense, like the way they move through the trees.
Yeah, we were definitely in their home visiting. Yeah.
So we saw orangutans, and on the right is a species of macaque. We there were the diversity of primates was great. There was orangutans, the two species of macaque,
Mhm.
langur or leaf monkey, and then we even saw a gibbon really close to us. So that was pretty
Yeah. And
special.
later the Siamangs too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. And they're all very curious about humans, what the heck they're doing, what they're eating. Yeah. This is a great picture. Eric really loves this picture. I love it too because, here you are in lowland forest where you get a lot of lianas doing what they do, just growing on things.
Big lianas in the lowlands, and definitely fewer of them, if any, in the upper montane area.
Big trees, very big trees.
Huge emergent trees.
Yeah, this is kind of like if you have an idea of what the Amazon is like, this is a little Amazon-y. It's a lot of stuff
Uh,
everywhere you look.
Jewel orchid on the left, and what is probably a moth caterpillar with excellent camouflage on the right. This is a video of land planaria, which is sometimes called a hammerhead worm. It's not a segmented worm, but it is pretty exciting. This we saw several of them
Yeah, yeah,
on the
yeah.
trip, and this one had great colors.
The craziness. Oh, I like got the colors.
But there was another invertebrate there, which
Yeah.
was a little more of a bother.
Yes. I guess the tropics in general. Well, I don't know. Asia,
Asia
South
tropic.
Asia, yeah, has what's known as land leeches, and there's at least two kinds, maybe three. I'm not sure, um, and or more. Who knows? And on this hike, I was the first to get bit, and I didn't even feel this until I saw this already bleeding. It didn't hurt at all, but first one to get bit of many, many bites. It just like leeches are gross, let's just say, but not a reason not to go.
And they don't really transmit disease, so
No,
at least there's
no.
that. Corina, before we left, Corina had shared this research paper with me that
Yeah,
said
yeah.
that cinnamon oil was 100% effective at keeping leeches away.
And we both drenched ourselves in it, but Eric drenched himself
It
twice
was
as
like
much.
classic, don't do this when you're going to travel. I bought some random product off online and didn't try it and just brought it with. And then I sprayed it on my ankles and immediately it burned my skin.
Yeah, anytime you were in the sun where it was the oil on you would
Yeah.
start burning. It would smell good.
But I smelled great, like cinnamon. So this was our really our first big Nepenthes site. It was a volcano, and Indonesia is very seismically active. And I just read that 2004 earthquake and tsunami in Sumatra, that earthquake lasts for 8.5 to 10 minutes.
Oh,
Like that.
wow.
Can you imagine that as Californians? That's a long earthquake.
So yeah, we this isn't quite lowland. This is a little bit higher, but here it's kind of a misty day where it's the entrance to the park. Every hike was up basically. Well, except for one, but every hike was up, 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 up. You could already smell the sulfur here before we got up to the crater, and started seeing really cool plants.
Like immediately we saw what turned out to be one of the coolest ferns we saw in the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
trip.
this is sort of iconic fern for the area for a lot of Asia, I think. Dipterus conjugata. You see it growing on along the roadsides a lot, on your hill walks, different elevations, except for we even saw it at Dipterus super hot lowland. So
Mhm.
it grows like everywhere, basically. It is so beautiful.
Such a dreamy plant.
Yeah, so unlike a fern. Not many ferns are.
We also started seeing blackberries, raspberries, in the genus Rubus. And I gotta say that kind of blew my mind that like the diversity of species within the Rubus genus that we saw. I think of them as like temperate plants,
Mhm.
but there is I think 40 plus species on Sumatra.
And yeah, I believe it. This one is really pretty. Just those little orange baubles in the hanging around,
Not tasty though.
No,
Not tasty.
little seedy.
Very pretty, but we started seeing rhododendrons. Also, we were getting to that elevation where the rhododendrons started to show.
Yeah, yeah. It was neat seeing a lot of rhododendrons. And here's one of our garden friends you might know in the Asian collection.
Yeah, this is this is the first site we saw it at, and then we started seeing it at a lot of the sites. But just a really cool species. It's in the witch hazel family, and we have two accessions growing outside here in Berkeley, in the Asian collection.
Yeah, it becomes a tree. It doesn't look like it here, but it's a tree. Started seeing pandan. These are really big old specimens of pandan.
If you look in the center of the picture, you can see two of our friends on this trip. So quite big plants are surrounding them.
And this is about the time it started raining, and that little ravine in the middle just filled up with water immediately. It got muddy. So yeah, more roadies.
Once we got through the pandan layer of the hill of the mountain, It really opened up. There's very few trees. It was shrubby with
Yeah.
rhodies and vacciniums. And we started seeing nepenthes in this spot. And see how the nepenthes are just kind of winding their way through the vacciniums?
Actually, this is a good time to say, a lot of carnivorous plants, or probably most carnivorous plants grow, you see them grow in bogs. You think bogs, you think carnivorous plants. These aren't growing in bogs, they're growing in soil. The roots are in soil, but the environment is, you know, the, the, there's a lot of competition for nutrition, especially here at this crater, which is sulfur. There's a lot of sulfur in the air and in the soil. And so they're getting their nutrition from, you know, having this adaptation for eating insects. So, 'cause who wants to live here?
I mean, it's
Very
amazing
acidic.
there's plants
Yeah.
alive there in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, we definitely reached those places. You can see in this image that plant life just couldn't deal with the elements
Just
anymore.
stops. It's way too acidic. Yeah. But that's why you have roadies. They kind of like that.
Rhodies and nepenthes.
Yeah.
Who knew? They were best friends. So this is a close-up of one of the sulfur vents, and you can see the minerals crystallizing. And it was really cool. One of the folks on this trip is a geologist, and so it was great having him kind of explain everything to us. If you ever do a trip, bring a geologist along. They know
Yeah, and
what's
an
going on.
entomologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our next one is a Dolop Malaya. I love that word. Just that name is great. This was the first. Well, I wasn't really on the last hike, so this is really my first hike. It seemed to be almost vertical the entire thing, but it wasn't. But this hike was great because we started about 1,500 meters up, um, which didn't seem very high, but then it ended at 1,800, and it really felt a lot different on
Hmm.
that little bit of change. But here at the bottom, we see a lot of little ferns and little mellostomes and little things that look like begonias and little things in the coffee family, and just a lot of little things, little sweet plants growing
Yeah.
along with some
It's a
moss,
And it
and
was kind of, after we started doing a bunch of these uh mountains,
yeah,
kind of realized there's these bands. So
yeah,
like
definitely.
this at the very base of this one was this melastome, like herbaceous melastome.
Yeah, and we saw
Yeah.
this at other times too, or a similar one at the same elevation. So, and then, whew, yeah, climbed up a bit and finally got our Nepenthes eyeballs on, so you could find this Nepenthes spectabilis in the undergrowth there. That was hard to see.
These plants
You
just
know,
disappear visually.
yeah, yeah, they're all over. Once you started seeing them, you just like, oh my gosh, there's Nepenthes everywhere.
And a big takeaway for me was because some of these species are very vining. If you look on the left of this image, there's that vine of the Nepenthes, but sometimes the vine would just look like a small sapling and just go 30, 40 feet into the
Yeah,
canopy.
yeah, and you had no idea what it was until you saw a picture off to the side. You could follow that back to the main plant. Oh, here's some more from our hikes. The ladders that weren't ladders that you had to go straight up was, yeah, challenging.
Very, very steep. Um, Little Nepenthes growing everywhere. You can see in the bottom
Yeah.
right here. But once we got to the top and the ridgeline,
Hmm.
the views were just incredible. And the forest we could see just went on for miles. It was
Yeah.
stunning.
And we're definitely, excuse me, we're on a ridge line where if you went, 5, 10 feet to either side, you were falling off the hill. You were not coming back from that. And that was common, common on our hikes. Stick to the path.
Stay
If
on the
there's
trail,
stay to the
stay with the
trail.
guide.
Don't wander off.
Once we got to the top, the kind of tree cover totally changed, and it was more like leptospermum, things in the tea tree family.
Very coarse, coarse
Coarse, yeah,
growth. Yeah. Whereas the bottom, it was soft and
yeah.
um, And then, oh, this is one of my favorites, Nepenthes michii. I didn't expect to see this one. So this was fun to find, It's a little cutie.
Total cutie. I didn't expect this one to like stick in my heart so much, but it
Yeah.
was a great one to see.
Yeah. Um,
And you can see here, it's the pictures are a little dark and shadowed, but you can see in context of the ridgeline. They're high up on that ridgeline,
yeah.
the top of that mountain.
Yeah, they're sticking out over, a drop, a precipitous there, and maybe some insects are gonna fly by, There's other things flowering you can't see in the pictures, but there's a lot of plants were in flower. So there were bugs around, definitely, you know.
And this is where I first started queuing into the conifers that we were seeing. We had seen some small saplings, but once we got to the ridgeline, we saw some larger plants. And you can see with this one, there's the conifer itself, but there's also nepenthes growing into the conifer. And so that was pretty awesome seeing nepenthes and
Yeah,
conifers kind of intermixing.
that was unexpected.
And that conifer turned out to be Dacrydium elatum. It looked kind of like a spruce, but it's in the podocarp family. So we have Dacrydium here at Berkeley, but they're in the Australasia section.
Yeah, which is a spectacular tree, So neat to see it here.
Totally neat.
There's Explicalandia again.
Our friend.
Yeah, here's
Uh,
another one I didn't expect to see either.
That was a really pretty picture, the ovata.
Yeah.
And then we started seeing the first of this kind of group of pictures, kind of colloquially called toilet bowl pictures.
Yeah.
You can kind of see the morphology looks a little bit like a toilet.
And so they're a little different. The lid is usually up higher and gets, lets more rainwater in, which isn't a problem apparently. But these tend to be a little bit um less. Well, this one has a peristome, but some of these are a little bit more just hoping things will fall in instead of attracting them with something sweet. And sometimes the inside of the cup is sticky on these too. So then they have sort of like a fly trap, pinguicula like uh, thing going on, So they're a little bit different. It's kind of neat.
And at almost all the sites, we saw hybrids. So this group of plants, the nepenthes, that gene flow across species is kind of common.
Yeah, yeah, and this is a really nice hybrid. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ovata flava. That was a great phrase. Ovata flava.
yeah. More roadies.
And more roadies.
Woo, then we started traveling south. We went back down to lowlands. We went to the shoreline, the coast of the Indian Ocean, and had a nice little hangout day at our hotel and went down to the beach for a few minutes.
The morning scene at the beach, the city beach, was awesome. It was all sorts of folks just down hanging out. And this was like 7 a.m. or something.
Oh, it was early,
Yeah.
definitely. They seemed to have been there for hours already, very nice. And then we went to sort of a very hot, this is probably our hottest day, into a lowland sort of scrubby area that was a former construction site for an amusement park that ran out of money. And so this was all clear cut. You can see we're up a little bit here. This is a view back to the town of Sabolga, where we stayed in the Indian Ocean. So it was clear cut. There was a access road. And then at the end of that was apparently the construction site, which we didn't quite make it to. We were just mostly along this road in sort of an agricultural area somewhat. And so we saw a lot of these first colonizers to clear cut areas. And this fern here, growing with the Nepenthes flower, is called Dicronopterus, which we ran into a lot. It's a sort of a shrubby grower, and these Nepenthes really love to grow in it. So the colonizers, what they do is they love to be in just exposed areas, and they start they're the first growth, and they start making habitat for the next group of plants to come along, and they add humus to the soil or duff and shade, and they keep it more humid. There's a lot of things they do. So, here we are. Oh gosh, yeah, this was such a great site. There's so many Nepenthes here. And it was so hot and
So very
sunny.
hot.
Yeah.
Before I go to the next slide, I just want to point out
Yeah.
this is a ripe
Yeah, ripe
seed.
seed.
Yeah.
Yeah, of Nepenthes ampullaria. This was, yeah, so great to see, a plant and seed. And we saw a lot of that too. So ampullaria is kind of a neat plant because at the base it has these lower pitchers, which are these little pot bellies, and they grow around the main stem in a cluster, on the ground, and you know, it's that's how you find it. You see these clusters in the duff,
Total cuties.
But
Yeah.
but that's not all. When it starts vining up, it also makes more pictures that are like in a cluster around the vining stem. So, a few feet up, you'll see some, and then a few more feet up, you'll see some more. I don't know how far that goes up, but it might eventually end up with a completely different kind of upper picture. I'm not even sure on that, but I should probably look that up. But anyways, it was really neat to see. Yeah.
This was just a really pretty species.
Yeah.
Like Sumatrana. There was a lot of big picture species in this site, it seemed like.
Yeah, yeah.
But Sumatrana just, basic Nepenthes shape, but bold, contrasting colors.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people would like to grow, that nice peristome. We started seeing Nepenthes eustachiae, which is, not, I don't know, maybe not the most beautiful one, but it looks great from afar, because they sort of glow. And there it is again growing up in that fern, and there's probably some pandan in there. There's 2 ferns, there's all kinds of stuff, just like.
And look at how many pictures there are. That's maybe 1 or 2 plants.
Yeah, and that's got to be 15 feet high,
Yeah.
At least, and it keeps going on.
But this kind of scrubby habitat, we were hanging out in this one spot looking over at the view, and I looked down and boom, was a variegated Nepenthes seedling with pictures and everything. So
Yeah.
the folks that are into variegated plants were like fully geeking out. It was great.
Yeah, this is kind of thing you sort of only expect in horticulture, not in the wild, in nature.
Hey, surprise.
Oh, we found Nepenthes beckeriana. And that's also kind of one that you might not see because it looks like dirt, but it's sweet still. It's got a nice shape. Rafflesiana we have in the collection, but it's never grown this good.
Look at those beautiful pictures.
Yeah, those are sort of like flying pot bellies just waiting for a meal,
And the geologist was pretty excited about them.
Yeah, yeah. It was a really great moment. So here's a little more of the habitat. There's pandan tree on the sort of growing out to the left, and Eric would tell you about the pine.
Kind of shockingly, there's a species of pine that's native to Sumatra up at altitude. So it's the only pine species that ranges to the equator or south of the equator naturally. So it was cool to see. It's hard to see in the picture, but there are Nepenthes growing up into the pine tree.
Yeah.
Like 20, 30 feet up into that tree.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was common sight too. Whenever there's a tree that's stuck up, there's Nepenthes growing up in it. So yeah, we didn't just look at Nepenthes, we ate a lot of food.
We ate some really good food.
Really amazing, diverse amount of food.
Yeah.
Like, every town had a different dishes, but it was all spicy, almost all spicy.
which was great for us.
Yeah.
This style that's in the photo was called Padang style, named after a town in Sumatra. And it was great because all these dishes that were pre-made, you basically have the whole menu arrive at your table in real life and in these little bowls, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to eat off that menu.
Yeah, and sometimes you didn't know what it was.
Sometimes your curry had teeth.
That was a tasty fish, though.
It's
Yeah.
really good.
I
If
mean,
folks out there have ever had Indonesian cuisine, you've probably had beef rendang. That's the more
yeah,
common one,
yeah.
popular.
And then we just saw a lot of markets and a lot of fruit sellers. Got to try all sorts of amazing things. Mangosteen also. We had the snake fruit and the durian. Durian was kind of a daily, seemed like a daily occurrence. This
There was
one loves durian.
we were there during peak durian season, so we were like at the end of most of our hikes, we those that wanted
Yeah.
to eat durian were just gorging themselves.
And yeah, there's like apples, there's so many different kinds of durian.
Yeah,
There's different shapes.
yeah.
Different flavors. Um, yeah, the fruit was a lot of fun. It was great to end your day with fruit.
We also got this dish with some kind of plain looking starchy chips, but they have a cool backstory because they're from a really ancient conifer lineage.
Yeah, the netum. We have one plant here in the collection. I don't know what species they use for this, but they use the nuts, or the lack of a better term, the pine nuts, because it's a conifer, to grind into flour to make these nice tasty chips with a nice spicy salsa.
And we also just randomly picked up some crackers that were made out of sago palm flour. So that's kind of the starchy inner core of this cultivated palm tree that is it starts just turned into flour, cooked into these crackers.
Yeah.
They were okay. Kind of boring.
We ate a lot of snacks that we weren't sure what they were made out of, and but when you could read the ingredients, you're always really surprised at what things were made out of and that they were good or not so good. But yeah. We started going south again. Well, we didn't go back north, but south. We started a little bit low, but we had to get up high in a mountain, and to get there, we took Jeep rides. We had two Jeeps to go off-roading, and we just packed ourselves in like 10, 12, 15 people to a Jeep in the truck bed. Very bouncy, gravelly, rocky road. About an hour drive on that, and you
It
felt
was rough.
very rough. You thought we were going to fall out. The greenery on the side is right here in this picture. It looks like you're not getting close, but later the road got more narrow and scarier, and it started to rain, and we were getting whacked with all sorts of unfriendly greenery.
Rattan.
Rattan. Yeah. We also started seeing a really cool fern, the Angiopteris, that we have in the garden.
We have two species represented here in Berkeley. One is in the Tropic House.
Yes, Evecta.
And then the other one, Lygotifolia, is planted along Strawberry Creek in the Asia collection. By the way, a lot of them were propagated by my buddy here. But on Sumatra, there are 6 species native. So we're not sure what species this was, but it was huge.
Yeah, and that was a small one. So yeah, we started climbing up. This was another one of those hikes that we had to use machetes, climb through rattan. And in this picture, we just climbed up a sheer hillside using ropes. It's very hot, sweat bees. Then we had to hike through the Dicronopterus again, which is shrubby and unfriendly, though it doesn't have spines, which is good. And it covers up all sorts of things you wouldn't expect underneath. So we almost fell into holes and ravines because you can't see it.
And the rattan was
Yeah.
just everywhere. Mostly we saw this kind of smaller, slender species that was extremely sharp
Yeah.
and painful, but we also saw this kind of more robust species.
Yeah, some of you who might remember the old tropical house, we had a species of climbing rattan in there. And it's an interesting plant. It's a great plant, but and I really love it, but it's no fun to work with because
Not
it
at all.
has these horrible claws.
Look at them. They look like actual claws.
And that's not they're on the leaf tips, they're like everywhere. So and they grab and they don't let go. And yeah, it's painful. Um, so glad it's gone. But
We started making our way higher and higher up that mountain.
yeah.
And at this point we were like 3 or 4 hours into the hike, and
Oh
we were not at our destination yet.
yeah, and I thought I was about to give up. And also I
No.
didn't think we were gonna make it back before dark.
It was questionable getting back
Yeah.
before dark.
And I don't think anyone had any headlights.
This one is in the pandan family. Started seeing this once we got to a certain elevation.
Yeah.
It was very ornamental. It had
Yeah.
that nice kind of purplish tinge to it.
They usually have sort of orangish flowers. I don't think we saw any flowers,
Mhm.
but yeah.
And there's this really awesome Schefflera heptaplurum, which was kind of vining and climbing. And that was kind of fun to see. Just totally different
Yeah.
growth form from the Schefflera that we grow here.
Yeah, it was, and this is one of those plants that I wish we were able to bring into cultivation because it would be a great garden plant, and not just for UCBG, but just in, your front yard, perhaps, like ornamentally.
Or like against a brick wall and
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, it would be really nice. So elevation, you could tell we were going up. Here's moss and sphagnum and all kinds of mosses, a lot of little change in the ferns. Everything's getting a little softer, a little more quiet, a little more elfin.
Yeah. The quietness. I hadn't thought about that
Yeah,
actually.
definitely the moss kept it quiet,
Yeah.
And there's no roads, so you couldn't hear any nearby, so you couldn't hear trucks anyways, but just the stillness was really
But we're
significant.
in that little pocket of still mossy forest. It wasn't very big. I mean, tiny, tiny postage stamp habitat. Is where we started seeing this sphagnum moss growing, at the equator. I grew up thinking of sphagnum moss as
It's
like
like,
boreal forest.
yeah, Scotland.
Yeah.
Oh, then we ran into another sweetheart, Lingulata. I don't know, there's not much to say about it, but I just love that. It's almost purple. It's wonderful.
And the exterior of that picture was very weird. It had this like beige texture.
Yeah, it's like
So it kind of disappeared.
cardboardy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cardboardy.
Yeah. Then once you saw it, you saw it, you know.
And look at that habitat, just like mangled jangle of moss and sticks and nepenthes.
And walking in it, it was very buoyant.
Yeah.
You weren't sure where the ground was. And there was no trail here. We were off-roading it. It felt a little bit like you know, we also shrunk.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting feeling. Yeah, what species is this again?
Jambon.
This is jambon. Yeah.
Just a nice toilet bowl pitcher plant.
Just hanging out.
Oh, and this was the site where there was mosquitoes that used the pitchers as
Mhm.
part of their like for the water part of their reproductive cycle. So honestly, there weren't that many mosquitoes on the hike up to the spot, but once we got to the spot,
Yeah.
they were swarming around.
But I wasn't getting bit, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I got that either.
You think they would come right at you. And also in the pictures, there were roaches here too, which I hadn't seen on this entire trip, but they were eating roaches or catching roaches. So, it's like roaches and larvae, you know. This is really nice species that I didn't expect to see. This is different in that the leaf margins there have little hairs. So it's hirsute, not only along the edge, but also along the mid vein there. And in this picture on the right, you can see the roaches and the mosquito larvae in there. And so those mosquito larvae don't get digested, by the way. The eggs are laid there and then they hatch and then they, become adults and fly out. So they're not food for the plant. They're just using it as their own habitat,
And there's definitely a research paper in there somewhere for a grad student for how those mosquitoes survive in
Yeah.
that chemistry.
Yeah, exactly. What is it? And this is also a good picture. You can see all the little, what do you call those little dots? Where, I'm drawing a blank, sorry. Where the dots are excreting, liquid,
The enzyme.
the fluid, the enzyme. Thank you. If there is an enzyme. Yeah. So.
Yeah, these are great pictures.
Yeah. More roadies.
And of course, rhododendrons. You're noticing a theme. Rhododendrons and nepenthes.
Yeah. Oh, so where do we go from here? We kept going.
Oh, this is Wet Mountain.
Yes, Wet Mountain. There were a lot of leeches here. I wasn't actually on this hike, but I heard a lot about it. Is this the Leech Mountain?
No, this is
Wet
Mountain.
Yeah.
It was wet the entire time. And no matter what brand or quality of rain gear you had, after a while, cheap, expensive, it didn't matter. It all was ruined. And all became leaky. We saw this bat flower growing down at the base of the mountain. And you can see like how cloudy the image is. It's just my phone was completely wet. The lens was wet. Everything was wet the whole time. And the higher up we went, the colder we got too. Curcugulo, we have a couple accessions outside in the Asia collection here at Berkeley. And there was definitely like that Curcugulo band.
Yeah, yeah. It's another one of those plants that you think should be in cultivation. I mean, it is a little bit, but it should be in cultivation more because it's a great tropical looking plant that gives you sort of a palm feel, but it's not a palm. It has flowers. And it's easy to care for, grows here in the Bay Area. Great. So anybody out there who wants to make some money.
Beautiful plant.
Some more mosses.
A dreamy moss.
Yeah.
This was a very difficult hike, both in steepness and the fact that it was muddy, so we were falling all the time. It was getting colder as we got further up. You can see the guy on the far right is wearing a down jacket, even though we're at the equator. And we finally made it up into that kind of mossy elfin forest zone. It was a weird space, also very quiet. Yeah, that was definitely a theme. In this picture, you can see a flowering nepenthes right next to a species of blackberry. So it's using the same habitat.
Seeing the blackberry grow in the moss is unexpected again. Yeah. Oh, here's a Zumier, another one of those lovey-dovey ones. This is very
color,
very fancy. Yeah, that color. And Jacquelinier, also another one of the toilet ones, but with a very interesting peristome. And this one has a lot of variation in picture and hybridizes too quite often. So, just the size and colors,
Everyone was very excited to see this species. Yeah, this was one of the green ones.
Yeah. This person here is our Indonesian student who is Hisham, who is just so happy to be able to go along on this trip. We hope he can come visit us someday.
He's a master's student in Java who was able to join us for this trip.
Yeah, at Bogor. So yeah. There's the inside. More mosquito larvae, different kind probably, who knows? Again, Jacquelinier, totally different.
Big, chunky pictures and really rigid, almost like Nepenthes lowii, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah. And just more wetness.
And fun little critters. This was a shellless snail. Apparently not a slug, but
and not a leech.
And look how wet Matt is. Like, we were so excited to get off that mountain and take a warm shower.
Woo! So, wow, yeah. After that, we got this unexpected. Everything always seemed to be unexpected. This unexpected opportunity to go to the Palupu Rafflesia Reserve because we had heard that there was a Rafflesia arnoldii flower in bloom. And not only that, there was this also native to Sumatra is the Amorphophallus titanum, which we
And we saw it.
Woo! It was a couple days past. We almost went and saw it in, full on bloom, but we didn't make it there in time. This was a highlight for me because I take care of these in the collection and they're easy to grow, but they're kind of like need a lot of attention and you can kill them really easily and everyone wants to know when they're going to flower and they never flower. And here's one, a giant flower that must have been 8, 9, 10 feet. I mean, you can see the spadix, that yellow part that's flopping down, that is like 5 feet. That's how tall I am. And then the rest of the flower, yeah. So the world's largest inflorescence right there. Growing in clay.
Yeah, wet clay.
Wet clay. Not what I expected.
We also saw this other species of, this one is a parasitic plant related to the Rafflesia, Rhizanthes. And it was a weird little thing.
Yeah, outer space.
Total outer space. Full on Stranger Things. And again, that the petals were rigid, like hard plastic.
Yeah.
They look like they're malleable, but no, it was.
Yeah, and even the hairs were bristly, even though they look soft. It's and I'm not even sure what that inner part is. I mean, I'm sure there's some pollen on there. I don't know. It's and here's the Rafflesia.
And we saw the Rafflesia, the world's largest flower.
Yes, yes. This was also very thick and meaty and very cardboardy, and smells similar to the Amorphophallus titanum in kind of a rotting meat, and it warms up too to attract pollinators inside. And here in this shot are these sort of bowling ball shaped flower buds. And it grows off this liana, and here's some flower buds on the liana itself and the fully open flower. So you can see how big that is. There's a person standing behind. It's like at least 3 feet across, 4 feet. I don't know. They probably get bigger.
So being a parasitic plant, its cells are fully within this other plant.
Yeah, and it doesn't photosynthesize. That's what it needs this vine to get its nutrition,
Just very strange. Yeah, the only time you really see it is when it produces
a flower.
A flower.
Yeah. So, and these pop up all over the reserve. They're not just on the trail. So anyone can go there. It's open to the public. But you never know where you're going to end up. We got lucky. It wasn't a long hike. You could be hiking for an hour to see a flower. Maybe nothing's happening. So, and these are endemic plants to Sumatra. At least the Amorphophallus is endemic to Sumatra. So it was really neat to see it. Endangered plants live. There's the inside. All the strange structures.
So strange.
Emitting stink. And after this, wow, yeah, then we got to have even more fun and cross the equator. I'm wearing the shirt I got there.
Woo!
And some of you might remember Gideon, who used to work here. Go back, yeah. Gideon Dollarhide used to be horticulturist here. Now he works for UCB Regional Parks. He came along on the trip too, so we had a lot of fun with him. And this was just a roadside stop. It wasn't anything really, extravagant, but they did have a giant globe.
It's made for great pictures.
Yeah. So wacky.
And we started getting into a part of the island that had pretty unique architecture. This was a cultural museum that we went to, built in spirit of the historic architecture. But you could see it in like random boring things too, like government offices and things like that.
And the roof structures are supposed to mimic water buffalo with their horns, So, and that it's a very wet place. Sumatra is very, very wet. There's a lot of water buffalo, or at least there used to be. And so, you want your spirit house to have a water buffalo spirit.
Good spirit.
Yeah.
A market day.
Saw a lot of roadside markets.
We have a quick video here. This was our bus and that we traveled the island with. And we just stopped here. I think most of us were napping as we arrived. So we kind of woke up in this stupor and walked out and encountered this. That was a great lunch.
That was a great lunch. Oh, yeah, where are we now?
Who knows? Another mountain. Um, oh,
These are just some other
this is
random.
Leech Mountain.
Yes, Leech Mountain. There's some plants, some other plants we saw that were, nice to see plants.
Beautiful impatiens.
Yeah,
Oh, we saw this Jack in the Pulpit, which
yeah.
another one of those
Arizona.
plants I think of as like Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and here we are. It's hot and rainy. And filmy ferns. So if any of you are fern fans out there, you might know about filmy ferns. They're sort of very dependent on humidity. And so this very high humidity area, and then so they can grow like they do, usually just sort of epiphytically, some terrestrially, but they're very thin. Their leaves are like 1 or 2 cells thick, and they can dry out so quick. So it's always humid here. That's how they can survive. They're really
Yeah,
beautiful.
so beautiful. They had this kind of like bluish,
Yeah, a
the way
lot
they
of them
caught
were
the light.
iridescent.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of plants were iridescent actually in the dark. So
This was a little cutie, Talangensis. Just a couple different color forms, not too big. Bongso was a fun one. Very kind of elegant the way the pictures hung. Very epiphytic. But by far, this was my favorite on the whole trip. Mikey Eye was a cool one,
yeah,
but this one was so weird, enormous. It had no peristem, no like lip to
yeah.
that picture. So it looked like someone went, like the edge was so
Sharp.
abrupt, yeah,
Yeah.
sharp. It looked like someone took scissors and cut it all off.
And it's sticky on the inside like a pinguicula. So and it also has a water trap too. So it's got two functions there.
And of course, like some of the other sites, saw some hybrids.
Yeah. Kept
So this was the final spot we went. I know it's about 1 o'clock, but if you have time, I encourage you to hang out with us or we go through this one spot because this was an incredible site.
it's magical.
Totally magical.
So yeah. I can never pronounce the name of this park.
Carinci
Carinci. This is Mount Carinci, the highest volcano on the island or
in
in
Indonesia.
all of Indonesia. So we arrived here in the dark the night before in pouring rain. So we couldn't see the mountain. We had no idea. I mean, we knew we were going to go up to a crater, but
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 also when we arrived, not only was it pitch black,
yeah,
but we had been in the
the
bus
bus,
all day long, so we are kind of just out of it. And it was
crazy.
pouring rain.
Rain, hadn't eaten for hours. Yeah, it was kind of horrible. But the next morning we woke up to this misty overcast and there's the view of the mountain. We're like, oh my gosh, we're gonna go up that. No, we didn't. We went off to the side.
So it's a pretty big national park, and it's one of those three national parks that make up the World Heritage Site, the Sumatra's Rainforest Heritage. But this was a poster up on the wall at the hostel that showed a lot of the wildlife that's endemic to this spot,
Yeah,
or native to this spot. And I mean, there's some big stuff, including tigers, and it has one of the densest tiger populations outside of India
yeah, yeah. So we were a little scared, but
in a fun way.
I should note I'd really wanted to see a tapir, but we didn't see any
No tapir,
tapirs.
yeah. Or no, we didn't see elephants either.
No,
There's elephants
no,
there.
yeah. So yeah, next day we had to climb up another crater.
So our destination was a crater lake, but to get to that spot, we had to hike up over that crater.
Yeah, and it was a long hike, and we had porters um, to get to the end, which was great.
And just a little stop along the way in natural green roof.
Yeah,
Just beautiful. And there's our friend Gideon.
yeah, can't get better with nature. And yeah, here's the top, the edge of the crater. You can see it goes straight down to the water. Um, and here on the side is a sign we saw a lot in Indonesia. Hati-hati. It means watch out, be careful, pay attention.
It was one of those Indonesian words we actually picked up. Hati
Yeah.
hati and bagus.
Yeah. Got down to the crater lake. We got into a couple of handmade canoes made out of tree trunks, and we piled in and rowed across the lake. Got very misty and mystical.
And look in the center of that picture is one of the canoes to give you a sense of scale. Whoops. Um, yeah, this is a pretty magical
Yeah,
spot and the largest freshwater lake in Southeast Asia.
it's larger than Toba.
No, Toba's the
No,
largest.
yeah. Sorry.
Thank you.
So we camped here, which is kind of neat. Of course, if you saw on the last slide, I mean, the greenery, the plants go straight down to the water's edge. This just happened to be previously campsite, so it was a little bit clear, but we still had to use machetes for about an hour to flatten everything out to put our tents up, and it was covered in leeches, and it was very wet. But
Right at the water's edge at the campground was Gideon noticed a berberis, which again,
yeah,
we grow outside here from temperate regions. But yeah.
yeah, it just looked like any old berberis. It was very pretty. Um,
We started encountering this large fruit. So this is a video of me trying to open that fruit. We wanted to know what it was. We were suspicious. We thought we knew.
yeah, we had an idea.
Oh. Oh.
But you can see it's an actual fig,
Yeah,
a huge fig fruit.
and I'm not even sure what tree it came off of, but one of the big trees. You just saw the fruit on the ground.
Yeah, we never figured out which tree it came from.
And something was eating it too. But what? We don't know.
Well, probably before they were extinct in this spot, rhinos were
Yeah,
one of
right.
the
Yeah, the
spots. So turn on your volume for this next video. It's another narrow video. Sorry about that, but we were hiking and we were locked in fog, and there was Simon gibbons singing to each other. It was a pretty magical moment.
two families calling back and forth.
Eric, I don't think the audio is actually working.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think we didn't choose the right settings. I didn't know you had it videos with audio, but
Okay. So imagine gibbons in the background going, do it with me.
You can also go to Oakland Zoo. They have Simangs. And if you're lucky in the morning, they'll call.
So after Siamangs, sorry about the audio. After Siamangs, started seeing rhododendrons again, which was a cue that we were getting close to Nepenthes.
Yeah, getting up in elevation.
You can barely see our campsite down below.
Yeah,
Along the lake.
water. Yeah. Yeah, we actually saw a lot of orchids. And this is the orchid picture of Cymbidium, which was really nice to see. And they only really showed up in the mossy zones too. We didn't really see them in lowlands. We found Singolana here, which is a nice one. That we have that in the collection, so it's nice to see it. Yeah.
Beautiful ribs.
Yeah, very elegant. And Aristolochioides, which was the one species of the whole list that we might see that I was really hoping to see, because we have it in the collection and it's kind of distinctive in its picture shape, and it's called Aristolochioides because its pictures sort of resemble Dutchman's pipe flower, although that's not a flower, what we're looking at here. It's the leaf, right? Different thing. And those are really cute. Cute's not the right word. We have this in the collection. And our plant is, small, and it's nice to see a full-size plant. These pictures were several inches to 4 or 5 inches large. And our plant, I'm not going to show you, but the pictures on our plant are maybe an inch. Very tiny plant compared. And on this hike, we walked right past it. Because some of the people who were on this hike knew where there was a couple of plants, and we walked right past it, didn't even see it, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's not there anymore. What happened to it? It wasn't until the hike down that we saw it. Going downhill you could see it but not up, and so I was very happy. That's one of the highlights there. So
it kind of was like, of the list of Nepenthes species, it was definitely like one of the ones we really wanted to see in its habitat.
Yeah, and it's endangered, so maybe even, I'm not sure, one of the critically endangered ones. Some of these species, not all that we saw, were endangered or critically endangered. So you could see it's still alive.
So we made it back down the mountain and spent the night camping in torrent rain. It rained for like 19 hours straight. Yeah. And we finally decided to get in the canoes and go back. And we were all wet and cold.
And miserable.
But we made it back. And some of the local Indonesians that had camped with us invited us to their home.
Yeah, this was the ranger, Derry was his name. This is his house. And his wife is in here somewhere. I'm not sure where, but she and her sisters all cooked the food. And basically it's a one-room house, and they had us for lunch, and they were just the nicest people. So it was all of our group and the porters and their family all in this one room eating, a shared meal. It was really great.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
And of course, the food was some of the best we had on the trip.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So thank you for joining us on this adventure. I hope you were able to kind of get a taste for some of the just incredible biodiversity that we were able to see.
It was really tough to do this video. We had so many pictures and so much to say, as you can tell. I mean, I don't know what more to say. We're really...
Come to the garden, see these plants, see the Nepenthes that Corina grows, see the different genera that we saw growing out in the garden.
Yeah, Exbucklandia.
It's Erycema season right now, so you get a lot of jack-in-the-pulpits.
Yeah, all kinds of things. And in the orchid house right now, there are cousins. I'm gonna, emphasize that, cousins to the Morphophallus titanium that are blooming. They're small and they still stink. So it's kind of like, some are from Sumatra in Indonesia. So, related. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Glad to have you along.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. On behalf of the UC Botanical Garden, thanks for supporting our work. And we hope you'll come see some plants in person at the garden soon. So thank you.
Bye.